All right, so someone sent us their physics stuff, a lab manual, and some really detailed revision sheets. Looks like we're doing a deep dive into light and sound today.
Yeah, light and sound. And look, whoever sent this in, they're clearly serious about really mastering this stuff.
But don't worry, we're going to make sure you not only ace that test.
But actually,
Yeah.
like, really understand it all.
Exactly. We're going way beyond just textbook definitions.
Yeah.
We're going to connect those experiments in your lab manual
Yeah. To the real world.
to the actual
Yeah.
real world.
Yeah.
Okay, so first things first, how does light travel? It seems like a simple question, but trust me,
It gets really interesting.
it does.
The answer, straight from your notes, is that light travels in straight lines. Think of it like shining a flashlight. It's this principle that explains why we have shadows.
Oh, right. Like
Wow.
that shadow experiment with the pepper shaker and the torch in the lab manual. The shadow was the exact shape of the shaker because the light couldn't bend around it.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. That principle isn't just for shadows. It's the foundation for laser technology.
Oh, wow.
Lasers are super precise and directional because they travel in those straight lines. And that's why we can use them for everything from surgery to scanning groceries at the checkout.
I never even thought about that. Okay, so we know light travels in straight lines. But what happens when light hits a surface? My notes mentioned reflection.
Reflection. Exactly. That's just light bouncing off a surface.
Okay.
But it's not like random. There are rules. Remember that angle of incidence equals angle of reflection
Yeah.
from the revision sheet.
Yeah, the law of reflection, the one from the mirror experiment. But why is that so important in real life?
Well, think about it. That predictable bouncing is why mirrors work, letting you see yourself. But it goes way beyond that. Reflective surfaces are key for telescopes, so we can gather light from distant stars. Even the way we see colors, it all starts with reflection.
Okay, hold on. Things are getting kind of complex already. But wait, there's more, right?
There's
Refraction. And something about a broken pencil.
yes. Refraction, this is where light bends as it passes from one thing to another, like air into water, and that broken pencil illusion. From your lab manual, classic example. It looks bent because the light from the underwater part changes direction when it enters the air.
So in our experiment, the angle of refraction, which is the angle at which the light bent, was different from the angle it hit the water at. Why does that happen?
It all comes down to how fast light travels in different materials. It slows down in denser materials like water or glass, and that change in speed makes the light bend. And that is what we call refraction.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But what's the big deal about refraction? Like, it's not just for making pencils look broken, is it?
Definitely not. Refraction is why we can see clearly with eyeglasses. The lenses in glasses are just carefully shaped pieces of glass that bend the light in a specific way to fix vision problems. And cameras, same idea. Lenses bend light to focus an image onto the sensor. Pretty much any optical instrument uses refraction.
Wow. Refraction is way more important than I thought. Okay, moving on. We've got the visible light spectrum. Now we're talking rainbows.
Rainbow. So you know how white light is actually a mix of all the colors of the rainbow? Remember that prism experiment?
Shining the white light through the prism, it's split into all those colors, just like a rainbow. And the lab manual even had that mnemonic. ROYGBV, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
That experiment shows how each color bends at a slightly different angle as it goes through. That's why they spread out and you see the whole spectrum.
And it's the same thing that happens when sunlight goes through raindrops after a storm, making those natural rainbows.
Yeah.
Like nature's putting on its own little light show.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how bending light can make such a cool visual thing.
This is making me think of playing with colored filters as a kid. One of the revision questions asks, what happens when you put a colored filter in front of a light?
Color filters. They're like bouncers at a club. They only let certain colors in, like a red filter. It only lets red light through and absorbs all the others. That's why things look different when you look through one.
So if you shine white light through a red filter, only the red comes through, making everything look red. Like the filter is subtracting all the other colors. That's why red traffic light looks red.
Exactly. It's filtering out all the colors except the one it's meant for.
Okay, last stop on this light train color mixing. This is where the revision sheets mention primary and secondary colors of light.
Right. You've got your primary colors, red, green, and blue, the building blocks. Then there are your secondary colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, which you get by mixing two primaries, that color mixing experiment from your lab manual.
Yeah, it was so cool. Combining all the different colored lights.
Yeah.
Red and green light made yellow, red and blue made magenta, and green and blue made cyan. It's wild that you can create all those colors by just mixing red, green, and blue.
It all boils down to how light works. It's additive. So when you mix different colors of light, you're basically adding their wavelengths together. And that creates new colors.
Okay, I get it. Quick question for our listeners before we move on to sound. Imagine you're driving at night and you see a red car under a streetlight. What color would the car appear if the streetlight was yellow?
Think about it.
Yeah, think about it for a sec.
This is a great example of color mixing in action. So remember, yellow light is made up of red and green light.
Right, so if the streetlight is only giving off red and green light, there's no blue light to reflect off the red car.
Meaning?
The car would look black because there's no blue light to reflect, so we wouldn't see any color from the car. It's such a cool example of how color perception depends not just on the object, but also on the light shining on it.
Exactly. Ready to switch gears? Let's turn down the lights and turn up the volume.
Okay.
It's time for sound.
I'm all ears.
So let's start with a simple question from the revision notes. What is sound? We're always hearing it, but have you ever actually thought about what it is?
Honestly, not really. I just kind of take it for granted.
Yeah, easy to do. But get this. Sound is all about vibrations. When something vibrates, it creates waves of energy that travel through stuff like air, water, even solids.
So those vibrations are what we hear as sound, but wait. One of my notes asks, can sound travel through anything? I'm guessing no, because of that bell jar experiment from the lab manual.
You're quick. Remember how the sound of the bell got quieter and quieter as we pumped air out of the jar? That's because sound needs something to travel through. Like those air molecules vibrate and carry those sound waves. No molecules, no sound.
Right, it's like dominoes. Each air molecule bumps the next one, transmitting the vibration. No molecules, no dominoes to fall, no sound. But does sound travel at the same speed through everything?
Another great question. You even had it in your revision notes. How fast does sound travel? The answer is, well, it depends what it's traveling through. Remember those experiments where we listened to sound through a string, through water, and then just through the air, like when we talked in class?
Yeah, the sound through the string seemed faster. What's up with that?
Think about how packed together the molecules are in different materials. Solids, they're dense, their molecules are close together, so vibrations can move through them super fast. Liquids, they're a bit more spread out, and then gases have the most space between molecules.
So sound travels fastest through solids, then liquids, then slowest through gases. Makes sense. But how did we actually measure the speed of sound in the lab?
You've got those experiment results in your revision notes. 2 microphones set a specific distance apart and a timer to measure how long it took a loud sound to travel between them.
Right, we did the calculation, and it took like 0.00059 seconds for the sound to travel 2 meters. So distance divided by time, we got a speed of about 339 meters per second.
Pretty close to the accepted speed of sound in air, which is about 330 meters per second.
Okay, so we know sound is vibration. We know how fast it travels. But how do we actually hear it? What makes a sound high-pitched or low-pitched?
Good one. The pitch of a sound depends on its frequency, which is just the number of vibrations every second measured in hertz.
So high frequency, more vibrations per second, higher pitch, and lower frequency, lower pitch. I'm picturing those sound waves on the oscilloscope from the experiment. The higher the pitch, the closer together the waves were, like they were all squished.
I like that. Now, what about volume? Why are some sounds quiet while others are super loud?
Yeah. Is that connected to frequency too?
Nope. Volume or loudness comes from the amplitude of a sound wave. Imagine those waves again on the oscilloscope. The taller the wave, the greater its amplitude and the louder the sound.
So a loud shout, high amplitude, soft whisper, low amplitude, gotcha. But I remember those oscilloscope readings, the loud sounds looked like they had more energy too. Is that a thing?
You got it. Amplitude directly shows the amount of energy in a sound wave. More energy, greater amplitude, louder sound.
Cool. So the pitch is determined by the frequency, how squished together the waves are, and loudness by the amplitude, how tall those waves are.
Exactly. It's like, imagine a high-speed train going fast on a track. That's like high frequency, high pitch. And a big, heavy truck going slowly on the same track. That's low frequency, low pitch. The speed is like the pitch, and the size is like the volume.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we can measure sound, but is there a limit to what we can actually hear?
That brings us to the range of human hearing. One of your revision questions even asks, can we hear all sounds? The answer, sadly, is no. We can only hear a specific range of frequencies.
I remember that experiment. Kind of depressing to realize my hearing isn't as good as it used to be. So what is the actual range humans can hear?
Usually it's about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Anything lower than 20 hertz is called infrasound, and anything higher than 20,000 hertz is ultrasound.
Ultrasound. Now we're talking. I remember reading about animals that can hear and even use ultrasound, like bats. They use it for echolocation.
Exactly. They emit these super high frequency sounds way above what we can hear and listen for the echoes bouncing back from objects. That's how they fly in the dark and even catch those tiny insects.
It's like a superpower. My notes mentioned dolphins using ultrasound too. Are they doing the same thing as bats?
Dolphins are amazing. They use a similar echolocation thing, emitting clicks and whistles and these pulsed calls that bounce back from everything around them. It helps them navigate, find food, and even talk to each other underwater.
Wow. Nature is so cool. So we've talked about the speed of sound, pitch, volume, and what we can actually hear. Anything else?
Well, your revision notes get into some really interesting stuff about ultrasound, like how we're using it. Ready to explore that?
Let's do it. I'm super curious about how something we can't even hear can be so useful. All right, ultrasound, we can't even hear it, but it's got all these amazing uses. Color me intrigued.
It's wild. Remember those prenatal ultrasounds? That's just the beginning of how we use ultrasound.
Yeah, using sound to see inside the body, it's crazy enough. There's more.
So much more. Ultrasound is like essential in medicine, way beyond just looking at babies. It can help diagnose tons of stuff: heart problems, gallstones, even tumors.
Okay, so how does that work? Is it like those baby scans, but like way more detailed?
Same idea, but with some fancy twists. Doctors use these ultrasound probes that send out those high-frequency sound waves, and as those waves travel through the body, they bounce back, or echo, off of different tissues.
And those echoes make the image.
Yep. The ultrasound machine takes those echoes and turns them into a picture so doctors can see what's going on inside. And the best part, it doesn't hurt, and there's no radiation involved.
That's amazing. But my notes also say ultrasound can be used for, like, therapy. Is that right?
Yeah.
Healing with sound.
We are. Sometimes we can actually use ultrasound to treat stuff. It can break up kidney stones, reduce inflammation, even help with pain.
Whoa, seriously? How does sound do all that?
Those high-frequency sound waves, when we focus them just right, can create vibrations that make heat deep inside the tissues. And that heat can get the blood flowing, relax muscles, even break down some icky growths.
It's like a deep tissue massage, but on the inside. Okay, so ultrasound is a total game changer for medicine. What else can it do?
Well, your notes mention sonar, which stands for sound navigation and ranging. It's another example of how we use ultrasound.
Sonar, right. That's how submarines navigate and find things underwater.
You got it. Submarines, ships, research vessels, they all use it. It's like echolocation, but underwater. Instead of those high-pitched sounds like bats use, sonar systems send out pulses of sound waves that travel through water.
So it sends out the waves, and when they hit something, they bounce back, making an echo.
Exactly. And by figuring out how long it takes for those echoes to come back, the sonar system can tell how far away something is, how big it is, even what shape it is.
That's brilliant. So it's not just about finding submarines or not hitting stuff underwater. You mentioned research vessels. What do they use sonar for?
Sonar is like the oceanographer's best friend. They use it to map the ocean floor, find shipwrecks, study all the cool underwater ecosystems, even track marine life.
It's like they have a sonic window into the ocean. So we've got medical imaging, treatment, underwater exploration.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, one of your revision questions asks about what humans can hear and mentions ultrasound. Remember how we said the highest we can usually hear is around 20,000 hertz?
Yeah, anything above that is ultrasound. But if we can't hear it, why does it matter?
Because other animals can hear it. And some even use it to communicate and navigate, like those bats and dolphins we talked about.
Right. So even though we can't hear it, ultrasound is a big deal for a lot of other creatures.
Exactly. It reminds us that what we can experience is just a tiny part of everything that's out there.
That's a good point. Makes you wonder what other amazing things are out there that we just don't know about because we can't sense them.
Totally. The more we learn about how different living things experience the world, the more we realize how amazing and diverse life on Earth really is.
We covered a lot today, from the basics of light and sound to all the incredible ways they're used in technology and medicine.
We talked about how light bends to make rainbows, how sound needs stuff to travel through, and how we can use ultrasound to look inside the body and explore the ocean.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it. And who knew a deep dive into these physics notes would be so fascinating?
It just shows the more you explore, the more you discover. Keep asking questions. Keep being curious.
You never know what incredible things you'll find. Until next time, happy learning.